welcome to this section on Psych 101, Elements of Psychology. In this section, we'll be looking at an overview of research methods, and we'll limit ourselves to the experimental research method. In the next section, we'll look at the other research methods or designs that we have. Research plays a critical role in psychology and society as a whole. However, what makes a piece of exercise of asking questions a research is the focus of this section. Research methods are to introduce you to the principles of research design and the techniques that are being used by psychology to study behavior and mental processes. This particular session will deal with the experimental method, and then all the other methods will be dealt with in the next section. So what is a research? Research is basically a systematic investigation into an issue or the study of materials or sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. So research can be seen as an endeavor to discover new or collate old facts by the scientific study of the subject or by the course of critical investigation. Two key importance of research is the provision of information. Research gives us new knowledge. We get new knowledge from research. And then also research, most of the time, gives us the ingredient to make projections and also to help us to take some policy decisions. Most policy decisions are based on concrete evidence, and this evidence must come from research. However, there are several challenges that are involved when it comes to research, especially in this part of our world. There are issues of funding. There is no money much of the time to do research. Government is not willing. Private entities are not willing. The researchers do not have the money to do that. And then secondly, attitude of the public. Most of the time, the public thinks that research are not of any benefit to them. And so you see them unwilling to take part in some useful researches. And then also there is lack of professionalism. Sometimes the researchers are not well trained, or they don't adhere to strict ethical issues and things like that. They don't show professionalism, so people are kind of reluctant when it comes to research. Now, the methods of scientific research. We have several of them. We have observational studies, correlational studies, experimental method, surveys, and case studies. This section, as I said, will look at only the experimental method or experimental research. So what is the experimental research or experimental method? It is simply a systematic controlled procedure that is aimed at establishing cause and effect relationship. And this can be done either in the lab or in the field. So we have two types of experimental research, the lab research and the field research. When I say it is a controlled steady procedure that aims at establishing cause and effect, is that the outcome of any experiment should be able to pinpoint a cause of a behavior or an event that has been observed. And it is only through experiment that we can tell that A causes B or that B causes C. In any of the other methods, we will not be able to make this bold statement, but we can only do that in experimental method. So a psychologist perhaps may theorize that alcohol leads to aggression. Alcohol leads to aggression. Maybe that is what you want to look at. When people drink a lot, then they become aggressive. So he may then hypothesize that participants who take specific dosage of alcohol will have increases in the aggression level. And then he will now design the study to test this hypothesis. If at the end he has control for several relevant factors, and it is indeed the case that alcohol leads to aggression, then we can conclude that alcohol causes people's aggression to increase. In an experiment, we need to understand certain key terms. One has to do with variables. When we are talking about variables, we are simply talking about things that will change, things that varies, or things that changes. We have two types of them that we need to understand. We have what we call the independent variable and then the dependent variable. Independent variable is the variable that is purposively changed or manipulated in a study. And then the dependent variable, the changes in the response to the independent variable. So that is what will be measured. The dependent variable is what will be measured. So for example, if you look at the example that I stated earlier, that psychologists will be interested in whether alcohol leads to an increase in aggression, then alcohol becomes the independent variable, and then the aggression becomes the dependent variable. Because it is the alcohol intake that we can manipulate. We can change it. We can give somebody maybe 1 thought, somebody 2 thought, somebody a bottle, and things like that. We can manipulate it, and then we see the effect on the dependent variable. So we need to understand these variables: independent variable, dependent variable. And there is another variable that we should also be concerned with. That is called extraneous variable. And this simply refers to any variable that can act as an independent variable, but it is not the focus of the study. So if you are looking at alcohol and aggression, apart from alcohol, there may be so many other things that could also lead to an increase in aggression. And those are the ones that we are referring to here as extraneous variables. And we need to control them in any experiment. So participants in an experimental group, in most studies you have 2 types of groups. In an experimental design you have 2 types of group. You have the experimental group and then you have the control group. Participants in the experimental group will most often be given the treatment. They will receive the independent variable, and then those in the control group will not experience the independent variable. So for example, there's still on the alcohol and the aggression. Those in the experimental group will give them a certain volume of alcohol to take. And then those in the control group will not give them any alcohol to take. So that at the end, maybe after they have taken those in the experimental group have taken it, we'll bring the 2 together, maybe on the field to go and play, and then we'll be able to see if those who have taken the alcohol will be exhibiting more aggressive behaviors or not. And in an experiment, what makes it possible for us to establish cause and effect relationship is the fact that every effort is done to ensure that other conditions are held constant for the 2 groups. There is a strict control when it comes to experimental design. We control all the extraneous variables. So what is the control that I'm talking about here, and why is it needed? The control group, why is it needed? The part of the experiment that serves as the standard of comparison is the control group. Without the control group, how do we judge that those who have taken the alcohol exhibit more aggression? Unless we have a comparison group that has not taken the alcohol. So that is where the control group is very necessary. It is the unchanged part of the experiment that detects the effect of hidden variables. We need to do that. How do we control for extraneous variables in an experiment? There are 3 basic ways of doing that. One is that we have to remove them from the study completely if it is possible. And then where it is not possible for us to remove the extraneous variables from the study, then we have to hold them constant. We must make sure that both the experimental group and the control group are exposed to the extraneous variables. They are distributed equally among both of them so that their effects will cancel each other. Another way that we can also control for extraneous variables is when we engage in randomization. When we randomly give every individual an opportunity to take part in the study. We do not purposively select people to take part in the study, but we give everybody a chance to take part in it. And that is one, we give everybody a chance to take part in the equal chance to take part in the study. That is what we call random selection. And then also we must give everybody an equal chance to belong to either the experimental group or the control group. We call that random assignment. So we can use both types of randomization to also control for the extraneous variables. There is a diagram here that explains the experimental method, the simplest form of experimental method that we have. We have two groups here. We have the experimental group and then a control group. And then first we have measured them on their level of sickness. And then the experimental group, we gave them perhaps some medicine or some fruit to take. The control group, we do not give them anything. And then after, we measure their health again to find out whether the medicine or the fruit we have given to the experimental group is effective or not. So that is the simplest experimental design that we can have. What are some of the advantages of the experimental design that we are talking about here? One is that we'll be able to make cause and effect statements. We can tell that A causes A. It is only through this research design that we can come up to this conclusion. All other design, we cannot come to this conclusion. And then also when it comes to the experimental design, we have the ability, we are able to manipulate some variables. We can change their level and things like that. And so, and we also control for several extraneous variables. There is strict control over there. So these are some of the advantages of the experimental method. What are some of the disadvantages? Sometimes because we want to establish cause and effect relationship, we control things so much so that the experimental condition does not look similar to what will happen in the real world. We kind of create an artificial situation. And so most of the time it becomes very difficult to apply what is happening, what is the outcome of an experiment to the real world situation. Experiments are also very time consuming and they are expensive. And sometimes it's very difficult for us to manipulate human beings. So you see most experimental psychologists falling on animals for their study. And we all know it's not all animal behaviors that are applicable to human beings. So these are some of the disadvantages of the experimental method. Thank you. In the next section, we'll look at the other methods that we use in psychology.